What kept you fighting?
I love to live too much. I love to live. I was also fighting to get back into the University of Alabama broadcast booth. I was fighting for my wife and my daughter. But the biggest thing is I just love life too much. I'm too darn stubborn. I'm 70. Well, that's not old. It's not old. I got news for you. And you might watch and you're saying you're 22 and 70 is ancient. It's not. 70 is very, very young yet. And I just wasn't ready to go. And I just fought it.
Beat Everyone is brought to you by Broadway Joe's Fantasy Sports, inspired by football legend Joe Namath. Embrace the thrill of daily fantasy sports like never before in a new app coming soon. Welcome to Beat Everyone. I am Ben Flanagan with AL.com, joined as always by Michael Casagrande, longtime AL.com Alabama football writer, and we're back with another edition of The Golden Age with none other than Eli Gold. Eli, how you doing?
Good to see everybody again.
Eli, today we're going to talk about something that is obviously very personal to you and certainly something that touched a lot of Alabama fans and your fans, your illness and your battle, the battle that you faced, and ultimately the triumphant return that you made back to the broadcasting booth. It's just an incredible story that touched a lot of people. And before we get into it, I think we want to start by hearing from one of your fans, and it's our old pal, Pee Wee from Grand Bay.
Ben, this is Pee Wee from Grand Bay. You know, I have not had the opportunity to speak to Eli since all of this happened. You know, I've known this man for almost his entire career, if not his entire career, at the University of Alabama. He is one of the most outstanding people that I have ever met. He's always been so very kind and gracious to me. I know his wife. She is a great lady. I consider them friends. It's just, it's kind of hard on me, to be honest with you. Like I said, I've known Eli for a long time. Excuse me. But, if you would, please tell him I said hi, and that I will miss him greatly. Thank you, sir.
Whew. Man. Well, thank you, Pee Wee. I appreciate that more than you can imagine. Pee Wee was the guy who would call in to Nick Saban's show as the first caller every week. I don't know how early in the day he'd get on, he'd call, and they'd put him on hold, and like 3 hours later the show would start or something. But Pee Wee was always there. But, he was just one of the many friends that I have developed over these years at Alabama. And as I said in a previous episode, they can take the job from me, but they can't take the memories. They can't take the Pee Wees of the world away from me. Those memories, these friendships, they will live on forever. And that was very, very nice of Pee Wee to call in. And we were doing a show one day. It wasn't even a show. Nick Saban was speaking at a fundraiser in Mobile. And Pee Wee lives in Grand Bay, which is, down south, Alabama. And he bought a ticket, Pee Wee did, to sit in the crowd. It was at the convention center there in Mobile. And I've forgotten, to be honest with you, what the benefit was for. But the coach was the keynote speaker, and I was asked to come along as the MC and what have you. And so we're doing the evening, and then I introduce the coach, and he gets up and starts speaking. And then we ask for questions. And all of a sudden, people's hands start going up, and we've got folks out and about with microphones, and they're going to go and get the mics to these people. And one of the people who jumped up was Pee Wee, because I had met him and I recognized him. The coach knew him by name, but had never seen him. And so Nick Saban is standing right here to my left at the podium. Okay, the podium's here. I'm sitting right here. And he calls on Pee Wee, but he says, You, sir, on the aisle, go right ahead. And I just pull on the coach's jacket. And I whisper, I said, that's Pee-wee. Hmm? I said, that's Pee-wee. And he just took it off from there, the coach did. Goes, Pee-wee, how the heck are you? Yada, 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 yada. And it was like they were longtime friends, and Pee-wee walked out of there, you know, on cloud nine because the coach knew who he was. And, you know, I was happy to help out, but Pee-wee is a dear friend, and he's a good man, and I appreciate I appreciate him calling in. That was very nice.
Well, Eli, I mean, he was obviously in part referencing, you know, the end of your time as the Alabama play-by-play announcer, but it's clear from the emotion in his voice in that call that you meant and mean a lot to him as not only a broadcaster but a friend. And I have to imagine that a lot of Alabama fans echo his feelings. And I just wonder, hearing something like that, and I'm sure you've heard from so many others throughout your life in that process, what has that meant to you?
More than you can imagine. More than you can imagine. I have gotten, I was going to say hundreds, it's been thousands of cards and letters and pictures and what have you from people who I've met over the years. And you know, I said to you, it's nothing, it's not an Einstein-like statement, but it's so much easier to be nice than to be, you know, a turd to somebody. It is so much nicer to be nice than to be an idiot. And I try and treat everybody with respect. And, you know, it's just the way I am. It's just the way I am. If somebody is kind enough to want to talk to me, I'm going to give them my time. I don't care who they are, what they could do for me. That's not it. I'm just happy to be able to treat people nicely. And that's where the friendships have developed over the years. But I know that a lot of people prayed for me. A lot of people sent me stuff. A lot of people, you know, called my office. A lot of people did a lot of things just to let me know that they were supporting me in my fight against cancer.
Just to get right to it, I guess, can you tell us how this all started?
Well, it was
Beginning of your story.
how it all started was I went to bed one night, just walked into the bedroom like I always did, from the living room to the bedroom. I hadn't been feeling all that swift, but I never anticipated cancer. I walked into the bedroom, went to bed. Claudette and I had a good night's sleep. I wake up the next morning, my legs didn't work. My legs did not work. I could not get out of bed. I could not move. I was paralyzed from the waist down. And you talk about scared. That's a classic example right there of being scared. They took me to the hospital, ended up giving me all sorts of steroid treatments, and that was to help the nerves, I guess, start shooting again in my legs and get my legs to work. But again, I just didn't feel well. I didn't feel well. I always had a ton of energy. I always went nonstop. And I was sleeping a whole lot more and this, that, and the other. And again, long story short, 7 months they had me in different hospitals. I was in the hospital for like 243 days. And when I say the hospital, I was in St. Vincent's, I was at UAB, I was at Spain Rehab Center at UAB, I was back in their cancer center. I went to a nursing home to try and learn how to walk again. I mean, I got there and, you know, they put me in this thing that's called a Hoyer lift. And it would physically lift me up. And I wasn't a small guy. I'm still not a small guy, but I was much bigger then. And this lift would lift me up. And it would plop me down in a wheelchair. And they'd push me into the bathroom where there was a shower with no lip on it, so I could roll with this chair into the shower. I mean, I was just I was totally unable to move myself. And it was awful, man. And then, bit by bit, I started learning how to walk. And then I started using the wheelchair more. And then I ended up with an electric wheelchair for a short while. And then because my hands were getting blistered from the wheels of the wheelchair and trying to propel myself, because that was not an easy job to do. And then I used a walker, and then a rollator, one of those walkers with a chair on it, with a seat on it. Then I started using a cane, but nobody could figure out, because every test came back negative. Nothing. They tested me for everything. They tested me for being an alien or something. I mean, they were testing me for everything. And there was nothing wrong with me, except I couldn't move and I felt like crap. Then I ended up with a terrible case of hiccups one day. And the hiccups, I mean, they were one after the next, after the next, after the next. I couldn't catch my breath. I mean, even now, thinking about it, I couldn't catch my breath. It wasn't like they were 5 seconds apart. I'd hiccup 3 times in 5 seconds. It was awful. They brought in a specialist, and she found a growth in my esophagus area. Turned out I indeed did have cancer. But the steroids that they were giving me for my legs was hiding all these diseases, all this problem. So I was showing negative for cancer, but I was eaten up with cancer. And so they walk into my hospital room on the 23rd of December, a couple of years ago. And they said, "Eli, Merry Christmas, how you doing? And by the way, you've got cancer." I said, well, at that point, I was relieved, believe it or not, because we knew at that point what we were facing here. They were treating me for all this stuff. I mean, I had literally they did dialysis, they did all sorts of stuff. They separated the elements of my blood. They did all this stuff. Nobody could find anything. They finally found this, and that was the 23rd of December. The 29th of December, 4 days after Christmas, we started chemotherapy. And thank God I responded to it. It was, they gave me 18 days worth of treatments worth of chemotherapy. And I was in bad shape. There were nights at the hospital where they told my wife and daughter, they said, you might not want to go home tonight. He may not make it through the night. And when I first got sick and I told people that my problems are orthopedic, well, that was because my legs weren't working, and I figured it was, orthopedic. Well, hell, I had no idea that I had this. And by the time they found it, I was 7 months into having the disease. So I was pushing stage 4 at that point. And long story short, thank God the chemo worked. And, I'm still, my doctor has told me, my oncologist has said that it'll be 2 years total before I am 1,000% over it. And the problem when I say over it, I'm doing real well now. I'm fine, except I sleep a little more than I used to. That could also be a byproduct of I'm a little older than I used to be. Not old, older. But I just, I will go to, if I stop, when I'm working, I'm doing stuff, I'm fine. But the second I sit down in my recliner, or the second I jump into the bed, I'm out. I'm out. And it's going to be, they say it'll be a total of 2 years, so maybe another half year, 3/4 of a year before I've got all my, I still have a little hitch in my get along in my right leg. It didn't respond 1,000%, but it's good. I don't have to use a cane or anything anymore. I get along fine. Just walking up and down stairs is a little challenging, but all in all, the prayers of everybody and the work of the doctors is magnificent. And I've thanked everybody as best I could. Last year, I have a number of football tickets that I own through Tide Pride, just like you guys, and I have a number of tickets that I got with my contract. And all of those tickets, other than the ones that my wife and daughter and my daughter's fiance would use, other than that, I would give the others away to the doctors and the nurses who took good care of me at the different hospitals. I still see some of them. We talk on occasion, but I was in bad shape. I was in bad shape.
I remember calling you a few times during that fall,
Yeah.
during that season, and you were explaining what was going on. And at that point, you hadn't got that diagnosis, and I could just
Yeah.
tell how concerned and just mysterious the whole thing was, because you guys couldn't figure out what was going on.
Yeah, we had the best doctors in the world. UAB is spectacular. All the hospitals, everybody around here, even the people at the nursing home, they were wonderful. They taught me how to walk again, and this is a real nursing home. I mean, God bless. There were people in the hallway, had no idea where they were. They were in their wheelchairs. They were just struggling. People were, yelling out at night for family members. I mean, it was like, you see, it was a wonderful facility, wonderful. But these people needed a lot of help, and there I was right along with them. And people were trying to find out where I was. What's wrong with Eli? What's the deal? And we found that there were people, trying to find me, and so we changed my name, and they changed my name on the registry. So if you called these places, I wasn't there. But the interesting thing was, without telling you what the name was, I will tell you that the name I adapted was, his initials were RTR. Yeah, roll Tide roll, but it was not that. Obviously, it was it was a name of a gentleman. We made somebody up. I went through all the emotions. I really did.
Well, Eli, we appreciate you sharing all that. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk more about the miraculous recovery that Eli Gold made. Stick around. This is the Golden Age on Beat Everyone. We're back on Beat Everyone. This is the Golden Age. We're here with Eli Gold. I'm Ben Flanagan. This is Michael Casagrande. And we're talking about Eli's battle with cancer and your amazing recovery that you made.
And I should mention, though, this is not only, we're talking about me, but I do a lot of speaking engagements. I spoke just yesterday in Gadsden, at the Rotary Club. And every place I go now, because, yes, the cancer and my recovery is part of my presentation, and I always ask, how many of you here have either had cancer, have had a loved one with cancer, you've lost somebody with cancer? 85%. It doesn't matter if I'm talking to a group of 80 or 850. 85% of the hands in the audience go up. A lot of people have dealt with this cancer. I met a wonderful man in the waiting room at one of the hospitals that I went back to. I guess it was a UAB, and he and I had a similar type of cancer. Regretfully, he has passed away now, and I lived. Why? Who knows? But I met so many people, and continue to meet so many people, or folks who will come up to me wherever and say, hey, I heard your story, and hey, I had cancer, and yada, 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 whatever it is. I've been blessed to survive. I really have.
Eli, you mentioned spending so much time in the hospital. You mentioned the 18 days of chemotherapy. I mean, what kept you fighting?
I love to live too much. I love to live. I was also fighting to get back into the University of Alabama broadcast booth. I was fighting for my wife and my daughter, who were, they're just spectacular people. And when you're in the hospital, and I hope you folks never have to go to the hospital, but you need to have an advocate there with you. Somebody, you know, they were telling me stuff, and I was out of it. And I was on all sorts of painkillers and different kind of stuff. I was out of it. My wife and daughter, along with the nurses and the doctors, they made sure that I got the care I was supposed to get. You know, and it was not easy on them. The caregivers, for those who are, you know what I'm saying, the caregiver almost has it as difficult as the patient. So, you know, all those things, you know, contributed to me getting back and going. But the biggest thing is I just love life too much. I'm too darn stubborn. You know, I'm 70. Well, that's not old. It's not old. I got news for you. And you might watch and you're saying you're 22 and 70 is ancient. It's not. 70 is very, very young yet. And I just wasn't ready to go. And I just fought it. But I mean, I lost, and I had a lot of weight to lose, but I lost 140 pounds. You know, I don't know how much you weigh. You probably don't.
About 140.
Well, a little bit more than that, but nevertheless, I lost almost a whole Michael. Unfortunately, he's come back, but no, in all seriousness, I lost 140 pounds. I withered away and I looked sick. And now I'm putting a little weight back on because I looked sick and I wasn't sick. But people are used to seeing me in a more robust look. And, you know, so I've added some weight back on, and I needed to. I didn't look well. But yeah, I just love living too much.
So that was the 2021, the fall of 21, correct?
Yeah.
So were you watching games? How aware are you of that football season?
I was not very much aware. I knew the record. I'd start to watch games, and then I'd fall asleep in the middle of the. Of course, what is this? Is 22 season, and you know a lot of those games, Bama blew the other team out really early. Mm-hmm. So I'd be watching in my hospital bed, and I must say the people at the nursing home where I was, they were so kind. They brought in a bigger TV than the small one they had hanging on the wall so I could watch the games. They were just wonderful, wonderful people. But I'd watch it, and then Bam would be up, 38-0, and I'd fall asleep. I didn't know, where I was, what was going on, and I remember being at times delirious and having all sorts of problems. They were giving me some medicine that didn't agree with me, and I was literally going nuts. I was speaking in tongues, literally. My daughter has given me videos that she took while I was in the hospital, and I was speaking in tongues, in foreign languages that I don't even know. It was the most bizarre thing in my life, but I tried to keep up, as best I could. But if I couldn't stay awake, I couldn't stay awake, and I didn't. I slept through a lot of that year.
You mentioned you were eager to get back to the booth.
Yeah.
How big of a motivator was that for you?
It was huge.
Because when you're facing something down like that, I think most people would think I can't think about anything else but beating this.
Yeah.
So how often did you think about work?
Constantly. I just would envision what I was doing. If I was awake, I'd envision, all right, they're playing at 1 o'clock. What would I be doing now? What would I be? But then there were times I was thinking that I was at some stadium, and I couldn't place where I was, and I wasn't in the stadium. I was just hallucinating. They gave me some medicine that they thought would help, because at that point we still didn't know what I was afflicted with. And, a lot of it was, psychotic drugs or whatever the heck it turned out to be. It wasn't really, but it was, for me, that's how they affected me. And it was terrible, man. It was just awful. But I missed it, and that's what kept me going, getting back to the broadcast booth. And, you know, they brought me back for 6 or 7 games and then said, see ya.
When did you start to feel better about the situation when you saw, I've turned a corner here, and not only am I going to get to live, but I could go back to the broadcasting booth?
Oh, it was, I don't know exactly when, but it was midsummer, leading up to that football season. It was midsummer. I was starting to walk a little bit better. I was still sleeping a lot, but every time I went back to the doctor, and of course when you're a cancer survivor, you go back fairly regularly to your oncologist for all sorts of tests, blood tests, C scans, CAT scans, PET scans, whatever, all these different things. And once those tests kept coming back with a good result, I felt like I was on my way. And then we started getting closer and closer to the football season. So we had to move my office at home from down in the basement where it was built, the office, but I couldn't go down and up the stairs. There was a lot of stairs to get down to the basement and up. So we moved my office up to a second living room area, like a family room kind of deal. So I would go into that family room and I'd sit there. We brought up my desk and the computer and the printer and my chair and the whole bit, and I made that into my office. And you know, I'd start reading the football magazines when they would come out and all of that kind of stuff. And you know, I bit by bit got better. But I was still walking with a cane at that point, and I had used a walker up until then, and I shifted to the cane. And it was a long process. It was, but it's no worse than anything any of these people have dealt with. So I've been lucky, and we're here. Yes, I'm telling my story, but I know what these people. I'd go to this place to get the infusion of chemo, and they were like 80 cubicles. Each cubicle had a recliner in it, because these are 6-hour infusions, at least in my case. And you know, every one of those cubicles were full, and they'd turn them over like 2 and 3 times a day. And that's just one hospital. A lot of hospitals have them. It's just amazing what cancer has done and how it's affected so many people. But I've been blessed, and you know, and here I am.
Who were some of the memorable people that reached out to you in those days?
Well, you know, the coach did. Jim Carabin, our boss at Crimson Tide Sports Network, he would reach out regularly. You know, I heard from you a couple of times. I heard from, you know, others. Butch Owens, my spotter, he would, you know, reach out regularly. A lot of friends of the family, and if they wouldn't bother me, they would talk to Claudette and just get the latest update. You know, I'm not on social media, so people couldn't Facebook me, or what is it, Facebook? Mm-hmm. Yeah, or they couldn't FaceTime or Twitter or X or whatever. I don't do any of that, so they couldn't reach me. But I just, you know, a lot of people reached out and just wanted to check on me and see how I was doing, including, you know, Miss Terry and the coach, and good people.
Eli, as we close with this, this is a universal experience for so many people. You mentioned that so many people are touched by this illness in so many ways. You know, this is a football show. We talk about Alabama football and all these great memories and everything. And you know, football can give people a lot of hope. But when you're going through something like this, it's obviously far more serious, and football is an afterthought. But what would you leave people with in terms of your experience? And I guess what message would you have for people who are going through something similar?
one thing I did wrong is I alienated myself from my good friends. I didn't want anybody to see me in that somewhat emaciated state, relative terms certainly, but I was down 140 pounds. I didn't want them to see me with, wires or tubes coming out of me and intravenous hanging here and this. I just didn't want people to see me in that kind of a setting. I did not, there were only one or two. Tom Stipe, our engineer producer at the network, he has been a lifelong friend, and I welcomed him. And Butch Owens, my spotter, I welcomed him and his wife to the room. Another friend of mine, David Palmer, not the running back, but another David Palmer, he and his wife would come up. But I really kept everybody at arm's length. And that was a mistake. That was a mistake. I should have allowed them to come up and spend time with me, because the talking and the friendly faces would have been good. But at the same time, after my friends left and the room was quiet, I enjoyed that too. It was a lot of effort to talk and be hospitable and so on. So that's the one thing I would tell you, to let your friends in because they care about you. But otherwise, just let, do what the doctors say, but be strong if you can. Be strong. Don't let the bastard win, and the bastard being the disease. I stole that line from a MASH show years ago, and I'll never forget it when somebody said that. It was Hawkeye Pierce said that to a patient. Don't let the bastard win. And you can't. You got to fight, because there's always something to live for. Yourself, for your family, for your friends, for whatever. Don't ever give up. As Jimmy V said, don't ever give up.
Eli, thank you so much. Football's great. We all love it. But there are things that are obviously far bigger and far more important. And
Yeah.
I know that, I speak for a lot of people. We're all just so thrilled that you made your recovery, that you went back to work, and that you're talking to us now.
Well, it's my pleasure. And we will move on to more football-oriented conversation next week, I'm sure.
Well, on that note, if you have a question for Eli, leave us a voicemail at 205-523-4809. Subscribe to Beat Everyone on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you find your podcasts. And for Michael Casagrande, for Eli Gold, I'm Ben Flanagan. Thank you so much for joining us. Beat Everyone is brought to you by Broadway Joe's Fantasy Sports, inspired by football legend Joe Namath. Embrace the thrill of daily fantasy sports like never before in a new app coming soon.